What an upgrade. And I think Jalen Hurts, he's much, much happier than normal. All right, so we've got a stacked interview lineup here tonight. So joining us as our first guest, he talks a lot about this team, and I'll tell you what, they are my favorite NFC best worst team that I think their outcome is going to be better than what last year gave them. I think the offense is really going to be interesting to watch, and he also breaks this down with a former NFL running back, Jonathan Stewart. So joining us, believing in the Panthers this year, Desmond Johnson. I mean, does it kind of just, make sense? Best, worst team. The only reason of it is because you think about the result they got last year where Bryce Young is literally working with an older Adam Thielen and literally not a whole lot of pieces to really move the needle for this offense. But this year I got Dave Canales. I've got a new GM who's familiar with this organization, and I got new weapons. So to me, I feel like this is going to be a very interesting team. Does that kind of make sense that this team could be making some noise this year?
Yeah, it does. It does make a lot of sense. And it goes even deeper than that. For folks that aren't diehard Panther fans, they don't know exactly what happened with the coaching staff and what happened last year where it imploded on itself. So we're really kind of giving a mulligan to Bryce Young. We're giving mulligans to the young wide receivers. We were hard on Miles Sanders, the running back we got in from Philly last year, and just looked like he couldn't do anything right. Come to find out, a lot of those players didn't know where they were supposed to be doing. They didn't know what hole to run to. They didn't know really what play they were supposed to be running. We found out earlier this week the Carolina Panthers offense was changed 3 different times during the season last year. So it's impossible to gauge how well Bryce Young did, or the offense as a whole, the team as a whole. I'm just amazed that they were as close as they were in the games they were in. I mean, they were pretty close every game, but like 2 the whole year. And knowing going into it that they didn't have an idea or clue what they were going to do on offense every single week for 17 weeks. It's just amazing. They can't be worse than what they were last year offensively. So I think that's what's got a lot of Carolina Panther fans a little bit more excited.
Yeah, and and this was kind of hard because honestly, I had faith in Frank Reich that he would have turned this thing around, because knowing with what he's been in with Philadelphia, getting them to the Super Bowl as far as they did, and then Indianapolis, I mean, I just kind of felt bad with the situation. But of course, it's kind of hard when you got an owner that in some ways, respectfully, kind of feels a little incompetent. He expects results right now. He wants this team to end up winning, but it's hard because a lot of this stuff is a slow cook build. So I think adding in the new pieces, a GM who's familiarized playing in this organization, and having a coach that was a quarterback whisperer last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. So do you think getting out some of this bad and bringing in, I'd say potentially some really good upgrades, is really going to make a difference for this organization and for this roster as a whole, right?
Yeah, I think so. And we talk about this a lot on Bleav in Panthers that I do with Panthers all-time leading rusher Jonathan Stewart and Panthers Sports Illustrated beat writer Skylar Callahan. We talked about this, and Dan Morgan, who comes from a litany of linebackers and middle linebackers in general from Carolina, if there's one thing the Panthers franchise is known for, it's for punching out linebackers from the inception onward for the past 30 years. And something Dan said in his initial press conference and going forward was that he was looking for quote unquote dogs, like guys that will basically resemble former Panthers that he's played with or scouted for or whatever it may be, whether it's a Steve Smith type, a Jonathan Stewart type, a Dan Morgan type. They all kind of have a certain kind of DNA to them. And granted, the Panthers have only been around for 30 years, but when they get that group of guys together, it's only happened 3 or 4 times, but when they have gotten it going, last time was 2015, it really goes. And it's just basic football. It's run the football, stop the run. Like, that's literally what the Panthers are best at doing when they have the personnel to do it. And I think Dave Canales is going to prescribe to that medicine. They've really decided they're going to really run the ball. It's not just lip service. And by retaining Ejiro Evero for a second year to be the defensive coordinator, and basically allowing him to get his type of guys in there like Josie Jewell, I don't see the defense. The defense finished, I think, top 2, top 3 in overall yards allowed last year, which is amazing. Although a lot of that, the Panthers offense was giving up really short fields. So it's kind of a warped stat, but we'll take it. So the Panthers having a defense like that, yes, you lost Brian Burns. Yes, you lost Frankie Louvu. You add Jadeveon Clowney. You put some pieces in there. You have a really good draft. We're super excited about Tevin Wallace, the young linebacker, the 3rd-round pick from Kentucky that looks like he might be a steal. He's a perfect example of what I was talking about here at the beginning. He feels like a Panther. Like, he feels like he's been here 5 years. He feels like a John Beeson type, a Luke Kuechly type, a Dan Morgan type, a Thomas Davis type. They're already starting to compare him to that a little bit because it's just the little things that you can't teach that he does that are similar to former Panther linebackers. So we're excited. Everyone's excited, though. Everyone's 0-0, so we don't have any reason to not be excited. The preseason has looked different than it did last year. You're talking about Frank Wright, and in hindsight, I think a lot of us were just happy we didn't have Matt Rule anymore. So it could have been anybody. But the fact that it was the first quarterback in franchise history, lived in Charlotte 20 years, he was coming home. They were building this Avengers-like coaching staff around him, of all his names and stuff. We didn't think so much about, well, maybe there's too many cooks in the kitchen. We were just happy Matt Rule was gone and that we were getting a fresh start finally, which we had been asking for a year and a half. And then when that fell apart, we didn't get who we wanted. And once we got, so Frank Wright was kind of a consolation prize, but for them to let him go 11 games into the season kind of shows the dysfunction that was going on behind the scenes in that coaching staff. You had coaches going behind Frank Wright's back directly to David Tepper and all this stuff. And in the end, it looks like Frank Wright was the old grandpa with the kids that was babysitting, but didn't know what they were doing in the backyard, trying to, blow up a clubhouse or something. Like, he's just there. So until they've relieved him of his duties. So we're excited about it. Dave brings a fresh perspective. He's super positive. He's probably one of the most positive people I've ever seen in my life. But that can, if it doesn't wear you down, that can really be a positive. And Lord knows this franchise needs it. So we're excited about Dave Canales and Dan Morgan.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I've defended Bryce Young and many of the rookies, and I've always said this, is that I will never condemn a player because of what the rookie season was, because at the end of the day, it ain't fair. We haven't really seen a whole lot of the development of what he could possibly look like, because here's the thing. You got an offensive line that every time when it was constantly collapsing, here's Bryce Young, he's running for his life, and then all of a sudden it's like we never saw the full development up on it. Now I feel like with having new offensive weapons, having, at least a decent offensive line to get things going, but then with Dave Canales, what he's done with Baker Mayfield and coming off of the year before when he was with Sean McVay, it really revamped his career in a sense, because the fact that, he took a lot of heat in Cleveland. I think he also kind of got a little bit of a little bit of a reality check in Carolina at the time, and then goes to LA. McVay shows him the way of what it means to be a quarterback and how to deal with adversity. Then he comes to Tampa and he does unbelievable stuff with a defensive coach. So I feel like with Dave Canales, he can unlock the potential that we want to see with Bryce Young, because we're in year 2 now. And at this point, we're wiping away the old, we're bringing in the new, and this should be the time where we actually get to see Bryce Young with some nice new pieces.
Yeah, I mean, people forget that, going back to last spring, Bryce wasn't the Panthers weren't the only team that wanted Bryce Young number 1. Like, Houston would have picked him number 1 if they had the number 1 pick, and they were angling to do so. Other teams that were right there in the top 5, they all wanted Bryce Young for the intangibles he showed at Alabama. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. So the talent is there. I think the problem, again, it's hard to gauge his season last year because of everything that was going on around him, to ask a rookie quarterback to learn 3 different offenses in season from various folks in the building. Bryce has said himself in these press conferences this year during training camp that just the simple fact that he's got one person running the offense and teaching it to him is so much better than to basically just have buffet style every 3 or 4 weeks in terms of trying to learn how to play. And I actually got flamed on social media at the end of last year because I had pointed out that Bryce Young's footwork was horrible at the end, really throughout the whole year, but especially towards the end. It was kind of like this lazy kind of step back, like 1-2 times. He's kind of looking around, and it looks like everything is not moving slow enough for him. and it's causing his feet to be not planted properly, and he's airing footballs, things of that sort. Everyone's coming at me. Well, he doesn't have an offensive line. What do you expect? Blah, 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 this and that. I understand all that. The footwork still is messed up. And Dave Canales, when he came in, the very first thing he did was work on his footwork and Bryce Young and put something in front of him to protect him in terms of Robert Hunt and the other guard that they signed. They've made a point to build from the interior out, which they did not do with the Frank Wright regime. They kind of set Bryce up for failure, really. But Dave is kind of setting it up where, all right, if he has a bad season this year, we are going to look at Bryce, and we are going to look at him. Is he an NFL quarterback? Because he's going to have an NFL pro line finally. He's going to have a number of running backs behind him to carry the load. He's going to have wide receivers that can get separation in Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette. He's got a third down guy, Adam Thielen, who was what he was supposed to be last year. Like, they've got pieces in a weak South. The NFC South might be the weakest division in all of football, so they could actually string some wins together and actually be a surprise. Like you said, I would say Carolina too. They were 2-15 last year in their division. No one's clear in terms of who's the best. I think a lot of people are starting to lean towards Atlanta, but Atlanta's going to Atlanta, so you got to kind of just wait and see what happens with them. I'm not saying the Panthers can win the division, but I don't think they're going to finish dead last in the division either. I think they'll be very competitive.
Yeah, I think there's going to be much needed improvement. And like I see with teams that usually don't finish with the best result, what ends up happening is you get a change in coaching regime. You get a change with new players added on from free agency and the draft. And sometimes, depending on positions and depending on like the quality of the hire, usually tells me they may either double, if not potentially triple their wins than what they got last year. And depending on how that, how we outlook it, because I think you're right about this with the NFC South, because, I mean, you've seen the Falcons play their card. I think Terry Fontenot, his plan is starting to come into fruition after getting Judon and Justin Simmons. And then, it seems like the Michael Penix pick wasn't so bad after all. And then you got Tampa, who they got rid of old expiring contracts on the defense. Some of them retired, and now they're coming in with the young. So there's going to be a lot of I'd say some shifts here and there if you're out looking on the NFC South as a whole, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, starting with Tampa, they don't have their offensive coordinator anymore. That's Dave Canales. So I'm curious to see what Baker looks like with a new offensive coordinator, because everywhere Dave's been, he's kind of been known as the short quarterback whisperer, so to speak, between Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield. He's made them all look better when they've worked with him in some capacity. So now he's not there. So I'm curious to see what that looks like in Tampa. And you mentioned they're starting the defense kind of over again. They kind of aged out. In Atlanta, it feels like they're trying to go for it now. Like, it feels like they're just putting all their chips in. They've been drafting skill position players the past 3 or 4 years. Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London. They've got guys. Their offensive line is really good. Their defense they've got really good safeties. Atlanta's got the pieces to do something. And if I had to pick a team to get in the playoffs and win a game from the NFC South, it would be Atlanta. I hate to say that, but that's that's the truth. And then you got Tampa and Carolina. Kind of, no one really knows what Carolina is until they really see them. And with Tampa, no one's going to really know how they are offensively until they get out there too. And then you have New Orleans, where, to be honest, I feel like it's the end of the road for New Orleans. They've been kicking the salary cap can down the road for a decade. Mickey Loomis doing magic with the numbers, and I think it's finally caught up to them. Their defense has aged out a bit. Alvin Kamara is a year older. Nobody believes in Derek Carr. Nobody believes in their head coach. He came in with a losing record to begin with. Dennis Allen, he was the coach of the Raiders. So I don't even know how he got this job, but I don't know if people really believe in the Saints. So honestly, right now, I look at it as Atlanta and then Tampa and Carolina, and then the Saints coming up in the rear.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. I mean, this is a stacked show that we have here tonight because of the fact that we're focusing on the NFC South, because I do have a good friend of mine down below. We're going to be explaining about, the state of the Saints as we kind of look into it a bit. But, I mean, this is going to be really interesting to see how the NFC South really looks like. But I will tell you this, because, I mean, Dave Tepper, when I look at him as an owner, I mean, I know a lot of people kind of viewed it as, he's the kind that I think is somewhat incompetent and somewhat, with the reaction we got from towards the end of the season was just like, it's never always a good look you want to put on a franchise, respectfully, right? And so this is where I think having these hires, it now allows these guys to start to build in the draft, start to outlook, a lot of these free agent guys here that they can bring in that could really upgrade this team. But all it has to come down to is that the team will get better in these spurts. You just got to give it time to cook, because we are in a caffeinated society where everybody wants to microwave these guys, get them to the best of their potential. I mean, how have you really outlooked, Dave Tepper from the time that he purchased this organization and what we're kind of seeing the state of it as of right now? I think this should be now where Panthers fans, there's hope in the building. There's a chance for them to really grow and really kind of get them into that state of relevancy again.
It's tempered hope. Because it almost feels like we've been battered and we're kind of reluctant to go into the next relationship because of what's happened previously. So we were super high at this point last year with Frank Reich and company, just to get burned like in the worst way. And you're talking about a franchise that hasn't had a winning season since 2018. Like, we've been going through it really since David Tepper bought the team. David Tepper has never had a winning season as owner of the Carolina Panthers, which is amazing. He bought the team in 2018. So it's just, we kind of got used to it. We don't want to make our expectations too high. We just did our Bleav in Panthers. We do an annual win-loss thing where Skylar and Stu will pick wins and losses, and I'm the tiebreaker if they both pick the same. And at one point, midway through the year, we had the Panthers at 6-2. It ended up rounding itself out. I think we had them finishing like 8-9 or something like that, which we were actually fine with. We were like, that actually makes a lot of sense. They have a really manageable schedule. After their bye, though, literally the week after their bye, they play Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and then I think they've got Philly in there. The Cowboys are in there. It gets tough. The bottom third of their schedule. So if they can stack wins early, especially divisional wins, because they start off against New Orleans, then who knows? We were talking about that on the show that the national media never pays attention to Carolina unless they're winning, and even then, they have to be winning a lot. Like, I remember this media, the national media, calling the Panthers the worst 12-0 team in NFL history in 2015 when they went 15-1, because they just couldn't wrap their minds around the Panthers being that good. And no one's going to give them any kind of credit. They're not the Cowboys. They're not going to lead off every talk show and everything else. They're just not. It's just not the way they're going to be. It's a small market. However, there are some things to be very happy with what they've done. It's very unusual for Panther fans to see a Panther front office actually go out and build a team the way you would build a team if someone was like, how would you build an NFL team? They actually went out and did it. They started in the interior. They signed their two biggest signings were the two offensive guards that they signed. They fixed the defensive line. They got their linebackers straight. They figured out the running back situation. They go out and draft a wide receiver. They had the highest separation rate in the league last year. You trade up into the first round and get another wide receiver to pair with it. It was all about getting Bryce weapons, protecting Bryce Young, and basically letting Dan Morgan cook, because they're number one on the waiver wire. They're literally, since they had the worst record last year, they're going to have first dibs on whoever gets cut, basically, here after week 3's preseason games when they do the final cuts. So they're in a good spot. Even the holes that they have right now, they'll be able to kind of maneuver through and figure out what to put in there. And Dan Morgan's strength is pro scouting. That's why he kind of got the job. Not necessarily college scouting, but his thing has been he can go find that 54, 55 man on the roster or that practice squad kid and see if he fits the scheme that he's actually doing and bring him in. And some guy off the street you never heard of, and he can just step in as a starter and go. So we're kind of looking forward to, all of this going down after next week.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty reasonable. 8-9, this year. I think honestly, like outlooking, the NFC, which, well, I will have my prediction up on here in the bottom half of the hour, but I think it seems reasonable. I kind of, view the Carolina Panthers potentially as a third place team this year because of just the players and the coaches and the people they brought into this building to really kind of get them in the best fashion. So I like it. I like the thought. A final question here for you before we shift over. So Xavier Legette and Jonathan Brooks, these are some two guys I am very excited to watch, especially Xavier Legette, because watching him at South Carolina and the kind of build and the kind of stature he has, I think Bryce Young's really going to love throwing to this guy, because the fact that he's being as hyper athletic as he is. How have you kind of broke down both these guys? Let's start with Xavier Legette and how you really see him make an impact with this offense this year.
Oh, hey, he's a specimen. I was kind of curious as to why, because the Panthers had the top pick of the second round of the draft, and they traded up to number 32 to get this kid. And I was like, why did they do that? Because Buffalo wasn't going to draft this kid. Like, why didn't they just wait till the second round? They liked him so much, they wanted to be able to give him a fifth-year option. And that's kind of the thing there in terms of him. He kind of built like DK Metcalf a little bit, like that country boy strong. Like, I don't think he lifts weights or anything, but he's just like cut like Diesel. Fast, can separate, can get high in the air for catches. The nexus point. He's going to have to fight for his spot. But they got big plans for him going forward. That's why they went up into the first round to go get him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm like, and I even kept an eye on him because I thought the same thing too. I thought Buffalo would have had the chance to end up getting somebody like that. Instead, they go on with Keon Coleman, which, again, not a bad draft pick. I just think this year, with as deep as the wide receivers have gone, I mean, anything was possible with these guys. And you can never go wrong with having enough weapons, in a wide receiver room, right? And so finally, Jonathan Brooks, I think this guy, watching him at Texas with a lot of his film, he's the kind of guy that really loves a little more of that ground and pound stuff, but he also comes in with pretty good speed. I know he's kind of sidelined at the moment, but how do you really expect Jonathan Brooks this year to look like? Because I think, I mean, I've watched Panther running backs all throughout the years. D'Angelo, I've even watched, multiple running backs, even former running back Jonathan Stewart himself. And so, how is he kind of broke down that with Jonathan Brooks? I mean, I think he's interesting.
We thought he was the best running back in the draft. So we were kind of surprised that we were able to get him. There was such a run on quarterbacks early in the first round that it made some stuff available late first, early second, going that way that we didn't think was going to be there. So for them to get Legette, however you pronounce it, and to get Jonathan Brooks, to pair him with Chuba Hubbard, to pair him with Miles Sanders, whoever that's going to be behind this revamped offensive line, I love it. The Panthers need to run the ball 30, 35, 40 times a game. Bryce doesn't have to be out there throwing it, 45 times or whatever to prove a point. Just run the offense. Let it come to you, grow into the role. And they've given you some weapons and some things to make it a little bit easier. Like, you don't have to push. Like, it felt like sometimes last year felt like he was having to push just to prove a point to whoever on the sideline. He seems more relaxed this year. And from reports from Skylar at training camp, he's been pretty much on the money in terms of his throws, his accuracy, his anticipation is off the chart this year. He's thrown it to spots, not to players. I'm really excited to see what he does, but having those receivers and having this running back Brooks, who probably won't start the season because he's still coming off of injury, maybe might see him by the end of September. But explosive guy, and he was behind Bijan Robinson at Texas, so you really saw him for a year, but the year he had got him drafted early in the second round. So we're excited about him for sure.
Yeah, this year is going to be really interesting. I'm curious to see how the Carolina Panthers really favor out this year, but I've got some pretty good feelings, good hopes for them. I'll tell you what, though, man, because I certainly would have loved to have had Jonathan Stewart up onto the show. I've reached out. I had a former Carolina Panther at one point, Rod Smith, the football IQ. The guy's great, and he broke it down perfectly when it came to Bryce Young's build, and then not to mention adding these guys up around. So this is going to be an interesting season, man. So I'm keeping an eye out on the Carolina Panthers this year and how the state of the NFC South looks like. Desmond, appreciate you taking up on the time, my friend. Where can people find you to keep the hope and believing in the Carolina Panthers?
So I own Tobacco Road Sports Radio here in North Carolina. We cover everything from NASCAR to ACC sports to pro wrestling and the Panthers. You can follow the Bleav in Panthers podcast on X at Bleav in Panthers. You can come to the YouTube channel, check out our shows. We're live every Tuesday at 10:30 during the season. It's interactive, so the fans can actually participate in the show, ask questions. It's open mailbag throughout, so you get a chance to ask NFL player like Jonathan Stewart or an NFL beat writer like Skylar pointed questions about the team, the channel's at youtube.com/at Tobacco Road Sports Radio. And the Bleav in Panthers tab is there. So you'll be able to catch all of our stuff there. And we're back full blown now. So we'll have a new episode this Tuesday at 10:30, and just found out today that Dave Canales is planning on playing Bryce Young in the starters here in preseason game 3, which I have no idea why he's going to, but that's what he wants to do. I think the Bills already said they're not playing their starters. So we'll see how long he keeps Bryce and the boys out there.
Oh, man, it's going to be interesting. But, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, I got to take a look and see kind of, how Bryce Young really feels comfortable in this pocket, because I'm getting all the NFL insights like in the next couple of weeks. I've been busy with this stuff. So I'm excited. I cannot wait. I think this is probably the most stacked NFL season I think we've ever had in a long time. So there's lots of potential. Divisions are going to look different. So I'm excited for what the season is going to bring. Desmond, appreciate you, man. Take care of yourself. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. We shall see how the Panthers favor out this year. All
right, Jake. Appreciate you having me on. And anytime you need me, man, just let me know.
You bet, man. All right. So we are staying in the division.